Live for the first time from the Double Feature podcast. It is our first ever Oscars episode. And now introducing your hosts in three, two, one.
Oh my God.
Ayo!
Oh man, I've not worn this in about a year since because I did Hairspray, the show, and I was Mr. Pinky and obviously pink suit. I've not
Ah,
worn this
okay.
in I've worn it for a couple of videos, but yeah, you look like a spotty bag away from Mr. Tumble right there.
I've done a little improv here. So it's my waistcoat from the wedding, my
Yeah.
Wolverhampton Wanderers tie.
Whoa, whoa!
Yeah, and
Love it.
this is a Infinity Stones shirt that I got from
Fair play.
Universal. See, I
Fair
put a
play.
little
Fair
thing
play.
together, neat myself up
It
a
works.
little.
I think it. I think it works. I think it works. So yeah, yeah. I haven't. I'm definitely not wearing shorts as well, London, because it's like this only goes like waist up, so it's too hot as well because it's like getting to
Same, waist
springtime.
up.
So yeah, it's yeah. Anyway, so as you
Anyways,
said,
yes.
this is our
Good morning,
first.
afternoon, evening, wherever you are. Welcome to the Double Feature Podcast for yet another episode. Is this number eight
Eight,
now?
eight.
Eight.
Yeah, number eight.
Wow.
Yeah, we're getting it. We are doing it. So this is going to be slightly different. It's our sort of Oscars special. Obviously, the Oscars, the big movie awards that happen every sort of April, February, March time. And we thought we would do a little special. It's going to be a bit similar to, if you remember episode 4, when we did those like sort of mini
Yeah.
quickfire rankings. We're kind of going to do that with each of the categories of the Oscars. The Oscars is basically our spotlight film this episode.
Yeah.
I did watch the broadcast as well. I partly regret it because I it was in the UK. It was until like 4 in the morning, and I had to get up at 8. So it was like that beautiful South song, "Old Red Eyes is back." When I woke up, because I had like really like puffed up red eyes when I woke up. But yeah, I may talk a little bit about the Oscars as like a broadcast, like how it was as a show, maybe. But the main thing we're looking at is like the winners and what we think of them. That's the main thing.
Yeah.
I imagine you didn't watch it because you have actually some self-respect.
Well, no, because if it's streamed at 4 in the morning and I've got to get work up to work at 6 in the morning, no chance.
Yeah, no, it was because it was on in the UK. It was on ITV. It was playing on ITV. So
Wow.
from like 12 till 4, and they had like Jonathan Ross in between. And got some of I just want to rant like I like Jonathan Ross, but his panel, some of the things they were saying was winding me up. They really were.
Yeah.
Like some of the things, like they were on about like because the Substance won best spoilers, but the Substance won best makeup and hairstyling, and obviously big kind of body horror kind of film. And one of the panelists was like, "Oh, doesn't that maybe stray too far into like CGI and like the visual effects?" It's like prosthetics are makeup. That's what that category is, and it really riled me up a bit. Um, yeah,
Understandable.
yeah. But anyway, well, before we get onto the Oscars mainly, we got some movie news. Obviously, part one still remains the same. We've got a fair bit of news actually in like movie, TV, pop culture.
Yeah, there's
Haven't
a
we?
couple
So,
of things here.
mhm.
Do
So
you
the
want to kick
first
us
one,
off there?
I'll kick it off. Again, it's another tribute to a cinematic legend passing, and this time we have the passing of Mr. Gene Hackman. The iconic actor who recently passed away, age of 95. The details about his passing have been a bit odd. I don't know if you've heard how much you've heard about his passings, but also like it's also like his wife and his dog have also passed away.
Yeah.
Um, so it's been a bit odd, and a lot of people have like there's been investigations into what the cause of death might have been. I'm not fully caught up on it, so I don't really want to say, oh, it is this, so I'd rather you go and like read for yourself if you want to find out. But regardless of how he passed away, it's still tragic. It's of course tragic that he's lost his wife and pets as well, and to his fans and the colleagues that he worked with, it's a big loss for Hollywood because he was such one of those really unique actors, one of those kind of once in a lifetime actors, who, he was a movie star. He had that kind of charisma and personality on screen. He could like sell a film based on him being in it alone. But he also like as well as that he gave his characters lots of depth and nuance, and you know there were so many varied performances across a variety of different genres, from like comedies to crime films, big blockbusters. Obviously, he was Lex Luthor in the old Superman films in the 70s and 80s. plenty of other films like Bonnie and Clyde, The French Connection, which I'll be talking about actually later on in the episode, The Conversation. So many, classic films, and then even into like the 90s, films like Unforgiven, The Royal Tenenbaums, the Wes Anderson film, he was in that, and he was amazing in that. But yeah, such a varied career, and may he rest in peace. And of course, well wishes to his family and his fans.
Indeed, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I know you said this last time for David Lynch. It's tricky to know where to go from these, but
Yeah.
I will be talking in honor of Gene actually for our classic movie section later, which will be on previous Best Picture winners. I will be talking about The French Connection because that won Best Picture back in 70, 71, 72, and obviously he starred in it, and I watched it and loved it. So spoilers for later on in the video, but I'll be talking about that. Yeah. So
Let's talk about Shrek.
That's what's gonna kill me. Anyway, yeah, Shrek. So we have the teaser trailer for Shrek 5, the first Shrek film in the first mainline Shrek film in Donkey's years.
Hey, I see.
Hey, yeah, clever jokes there. And we got the teaser, so the first proper look at it. People aren't very happy. I mean, it's not quite Sonic the Hedgehog, but people aren't very happy.
Interestingly,
Yeah.
the Sonic the Hedgehog account posted on the video about I know
Oh,
what
did
it's
they?
like if you need
Oh,
support.
mate. Whoever that social media intern is, give them a pay raise
The Sonic
because
social media team know how to joke about the things like Ugly Sonic pretty well. They're great
they
over
do.
that. But yeah, they
Mate,
wasted
that's
no
that's
time getting on Shrek at this one.
that's great. What do you think of it? Because I mean, it's I don't imagine it'll be like a scene from the final film. I reckon it's just like a first look of
Yeah,
this is what the new characters look like, and also Zendaya is playing Shrek's daughter. Um,
because apparently that's a huge reveal. I don't think she's a top tier name, to be fair.
yeah, I think she's good, but it's a very safe pick. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
it would have been better if they got Nicolas Cage, maybe.
Specifically as Shrek's daughter.
He could pull it off. He could pull it off, I think. Hey, look, he's a versatile actor, Nicolas Cage. Just don't be dissing him, especially not you. But the main
Oh
thing
man,
I think people are talking about is the animation. It just looks
definitely, yeah.
off. Yeah, I think. Bear in mind, obviously, as I say, it's been 15 years since Shrek Forever After, the last one. So obviously, animation has progressed and it is evolved and whatnot. And obviously, I wasn't expecting it to look exactly the same. Obviously, Puss in Boots: The Last Wish that obviously came out about 10 years after the first film. Puss and the rest of the characters got redesigned, but it still felt right. It still felt like it was in the same style of the old ones, just a bit, bit better and more stylish. Stylish, sorry. The new Shrek characters, they look odd. They just look to me. They almost look like too plastic. They just look too shiny and clean, and it just kind of goes against the kind of the very unique, ugly style of the first Shrek films of the 2000s.
It's we have Shrek at home kind of thing.
Yeah,
It's Shrek from
Shrek,
Timu or something.
the Shrek mockbuster. Yeah, the Shrek mockbuster Shriek.
Shriek.
um, and also, I gotta say, with that little teaser clip, they have the magic mirror as the phone, as a phone that you scroll
Yeah.
through, and there's Shrek is Love, Shrek is Life memes like it's 2017 again. Why? If we did it, it would be acceptable. DreamWorks doing it isn't. No, no. Don't
Look,
be
kids, we
pandering.
know about the Shrek memes. We're so cool.
It's like that
Hello,
Stephen
how do you
Shenmue.
do,
How do
fellow
you do,
kids?
fellow kids? It's exactly the same. It's exactly the same.
Oh,
I can't believe it. But yeah, hopefully the film will be good. And that it's not like a detriment on the
yeah,
story. It's
yeah.
just I'm obviously going to give it a chance, but the art style not too big. It kind of almost like Shrek was about like a subversion of a lot of the mainstream animated kids movies. Now it's almost become that. It's become the very thing it swore to destroy. But it kind of has it's kind of just become generic now in terms of visually how it
Yeah.
looks.
But you know what? There's
Yeah,
one real winner in the teaser, and that's the Magic Mirror. He got that Giga Chad Ching going on after 15 years.
he got gains. He got
He
gains.
got gains.
Yeah, it's just
Oh man.
man. Yeah. But what else? Is there anything else That
Yeah, we
we
both
got?
had one thing. I'll just shoot off first. It's a very brief thing.
Yeah.
This is basically going to be, I'm going to mention this over like this episode, next episode, and then hopefully the episode afterwards, I'll be able to go in depth. But the new Daredevil TV show's come out on Disney Plus.
Oh yeah.
So a lot of people might be worried about like the quality of it based on like the recent MCU TV show trend with
Yeah.
some relatively not great shows lately. But
That's putting it mildly. 007.
but Daredevil has been really good so far. Two episodes came out on Wednesday. It follows on from the Netflix show, which I really enjoyed. It's a really good show. Yeah, the
I mean,
Netflix
I
show
should say
was
I've
ages
never.
ago.
Sorry. So I was gonna say like, I've never seen the Netflix show, so I can't really comment. I probably won't check it out, having not seen the original Netflix show. But I am glad that it's kind of in that same because it's the same like cast and crew, by the way.
Yeah, a
Oh,
lot of the characters from the Netflix one came back for it. The
it's a
main
lot of
thing
the
is
same
obviously
actors as well.
you've got Charlie Cox back for Daredevil, you've got Vincent D'Onofrio back for Kingpin. So those are like
Hmm.
the main ones. It's been really good so far. It's got the same kind of quality that the Netflix show had. It's just really nice to see that it's doesn't feel like it's changed because it's MCU and Disney Plus now.
Yeah,
And
it's kind of it's kind of the sorry.
aside from like one or
Sorry.
two kind of references to wider MCU events within the first couple episodes, very vague references,
Yeah.
it's mostly pretty self-contained within the Daredevil universe
Mhm.
here. So it kind of it's nice that it's like, oh well, you don't need to watch anything else. You just need to know Daredevil, and then
Yeah.
you go into Daredevil.
Is it almost like how Deadpool and Wolverine, even though it was in the MCU and had like connections to the MCU, still it didn't feel like they had to like water down Deadpool.
Yeah,
Like they didn't have to cut out the swearing and the violence. It still works as a
they
Deadpool
definitely
film.
did not cut
Is it
down the
kind of like is it?
violence. It's still pretty
Oh, did it
violent.
not?
So
Oh, that's good to
it's
hear.
kept up it's kept the roots that it had from the Netflix show. So it's
That's good then.
yeah,
Hmm.
it's been getting pretty good
So
reviews so
yeah.
far as well. It's been it's been one that critics and audiences have been enjoying. So it's yeah, I'm really hoping to see where it goes forward. Whenever it does finish, I'll talk about it more in depth on part one.
Hmm. Yes, absolutely. I mean, I'm happy for its fans as well. But it is kind of a lot of people are really enjoying it. I'm happy to hear that. I probably won't, as I say, check it out because I'm not really caught up with it. But I'm happy that it's gone well so far.
Yeah. Anyway, you had one more point to make. You wanted to talk about
I,
a
I just have
certain you got
I
written
gave a little
down.
hint in the I gave a little hint in the 007 because
Yes.
I've I've made it clear before I am a huge James Bond fan.
Oh,
But in the
really?
past few years,
I didn't know.
I mean, I mean, hang on, let me get it, My Aston Martin.
Oh, okay.
And I've got the poster in the background of all 25 Bond posters that there. That's what that poster is there. It's all the Bond Anyway, but since Daniel Craig's last film, No Time to Die, in 2021 now, so like nearly 4 years ago, there's been
Wow.
barely, yeah, it's been that long, but there's been barely any activity in terms of what is next for the franchise. And so many people have been asking, like what's next? Who's the next Bond? I keep getting people coming up to me as more casual fans of like, are they going to make any more and whatnot? Because there's been radio silence basically until recently, where because MGM, who make the Bond films, they were recently bought out by Amazon not long ago. And so a lot of the Bond projects have been associated with Amazon. So there's that. And recently it was announced that Amazon are kind of making a partnership with Bob Broccoli and Michael Wilson, who were producing the films from like the mid 90s onwards, so Pierce Brosnan, Daniel Craig films. And basically Amazon now have creative control over the Bond franchise. And I'm conflicted on this. I can see both sides of this argument, and I kind of agree in both ways. Yes, you're doing the Roger Moore eyebrow raise there.
Yes.
Yes. I love Roger Moore. He's my favorite Bond, but yeah, I'm kind of conflicted because obviously we've seen how Marvel and Star Wars went down when they were bought out by a big company.
Yeah.
They just became content. It just became content for a stream platform, and it's like spin-off. And it's like we don't need for Bond, we don't need like a money penny spin-off or a Q TV movie. We don't need that. The Bond films are special as is. They are like these, very, all of them are sort of an event, like when No Time to Die came out, it was people were talking about, oh, have you seen the new Bond film? It's like this event, and it's a bit like Doctor Who. It's a very British sort of cultural thing, it's a very special thing in that sort of way. Been going on for like 60 years, the films have. But on the other hand, I do also think it maybe is a good thing that Barbara and Michael, who are the previous producers, they're now stepping down because they were. I think it got to a point where they maybe kind of had lost a passion for the franchise because you got to remember the Bond films, Eon Productions who produced them. It's almost been like a family sort of business. Ever since the '60s with Cubby Broccoli, Barbara's father, producing in the '60s with Harry Saltzman. Then in the '70s, Saltzman left, and it was just Cubby producing. Then he got much older, and then in the '90s, when Pierce Brosnan came along as Bond, that's when Barbara and Michael started producing, and they've been producing for nearly 30 years. So, Michael's in his 80s, he's getting on. Barbara has had more interest in other film and theatre projects. So I can understand why they maybe aren't as passionate for just making Bond films, but there is still a hunger for them. Like Christopher Nolan has said that he'd love to direct a Bond film. So many people would love to, put their stamp on Bond because it's such an iconic franchise. So I don't necessarily mind it, changing that tradition and having a new owner in a sense, so long as the people who make the films respect the legacy and, give the fans what they want and really kind of, you know, treat each project as quite special. And I think I'm maybe, you know, it is Amazon. Jeff Bezos is basically a Bond villain. Sending rockets to space and whatnot. He's basically a Bond villain, but I'd have more faith than Disney because I think Amazon, like with stuff like The Boys, have made some strong originals and whatnot.
Oh
Um,
yeah, yeah. Amazon have made some good original stuff. I
yeah,
mean,
I was gonna make a Ricky to Nicky joke, but
no,
but
that's
but
good. That's good stuff.
it was good stuff. But you see what I mean? I have a bit more faith if it were like Disney, I'd be like, I'd want to just no, you know.
Yeah,
I just want I no, I wouldn't. But I think Amazon I'm a little bit more trusting of, but I am still cautious, I think. But I think it could be
cautiously
exciting.
optimistic then.
That more so that, yeah. I think
Yeah,
because the thing is, Bond's biggest enemy is not Blofeld or Spectre, it's legal troubles.
right.
You know. There's so many in the mid '90s, before Brosnan, as I say, that was the early '90s was kind of a big turning point. It's when Cubby stepped down and Barbara came on to produce the films, and there was a big legal battle for 6 years. It was the longest gap between Bond films, and even go back to the Ian Fleming books. Read about Thunderball, the book Thunderball, and how that came about, and all the legal troubles that story has had in the years since. It's bonkers. There's been so much of that, and it's it's just how it's always been really for God knows how many years. So, but I'm interested to see a bit more momentum in one of my favorite, probably my favorite franchise of my favorite big franchise. I'd say Bond is. Yeah,
Yeah, we'll have to see how that
because
one goes then.
fingers crossed. Because it's even the films that I don't like as much, like Spectre, which I know you've seen. I absolutely loathe Spectre and Quantum of Solace, and there's a couple that I don't really like, but all of them do feel special. It's almost like the George Lucas Star Wars films, even like Attack the Clones and whatnot. I don't like. I still have a lot of fondness for them, even if they're not good movies, because they all feel like they have all a bit of love and care in each and every one of them, and it's not just corporate slop. You know.
Does that translate to the sequel trilogy, or are we excluding that for this?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, may as well be. I don't have fond memories of the sequel trilogy of Star Wars. I wanted to rewatch them just to see how they kind of hold up. But I think mainly because the fan backlash and all the kind of division and whatnot, I just don't have fond memories of them, so I just never kind of went back to them. Um,
Yeah,
I just like to stick with the Lucas Six films.
that's fair.
Yeah, but anyway, that's all the news I've got for this
Yeah,
segment.
that's it. I'm out of news as well. So
And the Oscar for best news segment goes to, and it goes to you. So there you go. There you go.
yay,
Take it.
thank
Take
you.
the
I'll
Oscar.
take that there.
There you go.
Yay, thank you. I'd like to
Yay.
thank the
I want
Academy and my family
I
and
want to thank my mom and dad. It's so
get up here,
I
say
want
your piece, thank your God and
I
whatever,
want to
and
thank
go away.
Ronnie.
um, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, spitting now, part two, Oscars.
Oscars, yes.
So we have the the Oscars now. This is essentially our spotlight movie. As I said, I stayed up to watch it until 4 in the morning. I do regret it. Not regret it because it was kind of fun to watch. It was, to be fair, I will give it this. I will talk about the ceremony. It was a pretty smooth broadcast overall. Like the actual show. I think that's kind of an interesting point to make as well. It's not just the winners, but also how the show runs. And I think for the most part, it was a pretty smooth show. I think Conan was a really good host. He's quite affable. He's quite charismatic. I think much more than Jimmy Kimmel, which is just like
Ugh, yeah, he's not
he
good.
really he really gets on my tits because he hosted the last two, and I did watch a bit of the last year's one, and it was like, oh, who let hands up, who let your kids vote in the best animated feature, and then it went to a Ghibli movie. You idiot, you absolute idiot. But no, Conan was cool though. Like Conan's genuinely quite charismatic, and I think had some genuinely really good like sharp jokes. I think so.
Yeah. I
Yeah, I think
haven't
he's
I haven't seen much of Jimmy Kimmel, but there was this
maybe
Metallica
keep it that
concert
way.
in December that he was doing like the intro for, and oh, he was like
Yeah,
the
yeah.
funniest guy I've ever seen.
Yeah, I think yeah, it's just not fun. I
He's
just don't
not
I
it.
know.
He's
But
not it.
Conan was much better. I think he's quite affable and it made the show run smooth. But I think that did mean when they did kind of have like the more scripted skits, like they had Adam Sandler show up for a bit, uh and they had like a couple of numbers like we are not gonna waste your time. I think it because of how charismatic he is, I think you could feel when it was more scripted. Just
Right.
kind of like a sort of backhanded compliment. But I think it was tolerable, I think. And yeah, there were some strong bits. I loved the very beginning with Cynthia and Ariana performing "Defying Gravity" and "Summer of the Rainbow" as well. And mate, phenomenal singers, and obviously I love Wicked. Would you like me? Because I'm kind of repping Wicked with the pink. You know, would you like me to have a go at the
Do
the Defying
it.
Gravity?
Do
Do you want
it.
me to do it?
Do
Do you want
it.
me to do
Do
it?
it.
Okay, okay.
Womp womp.
Oh, that's so bad. That's so bad. It's staying in. It's staying in. Yeah. And that was in head voice as well, which is just
Peak
bad.
content.
Oh man,
Absolute cinema.
it's yeah, truly amazing. I should get an Oscar for that. Yeah. But speaking of the awards, we are going to now go through all of the categories. We're just going to kind of go quick fire, like go through each category. I've written them all down now, so we'll do it, and I'll also do it in order of when they were given. So because I kept track
Okay.
of it, so we'll go from that. So yeah, it's just going to be like I'm probably going to be leaving this because I'm more. This is more my territory than you, isn't it?
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
yeah, but I'll kind of leave this. I'll say which one's won, and I'll maybe chip in of like what who I think maybe could have won instead if I don't agree and whatnot. But let's go through. So the first one was Best Supporting Actor, and it went to Kieran Culkin for his role in A Real Pain. I don't know if you saw that one.
Nope, I don't even know who that guy is. So,
He's Macaulay Culkin's brother.
yeah, no, I've not seen him in anything, I don't think.
He
So,
was well. Have you seen Home Alone?
oh wait, no, which one was he in Home Alone?
He's one of the kids in Home. Like Macaulay Culkin, the main kid.
Yeah, obviously I know him. Yeah, but I wouldn't have been able to tell you
Kieran's
which of the other ones was
no
him. Yeah,
Kieran's his brother in that. Yeah.
right.
Or like one of the
Okay.
other kids in the family. But either way, he's been in like Succession and like Scott Pilgrim, I think. But yeah, Real Pain. It was the Jesse Eisenberg film. I did watch this like the other week. It's a really great film. I think you'd love it. I think it's a really great film, kind of like comedy drama. And he's been getting a lot. It didn't get Best Picture nom, but he's getting a lot of like obviously accolades for his performance, but also Jesse Eisenberg because he wrote and directed it as well as acted in it. And Kieran was fantastic in it. I was really happy to see him. The other nominees were great, Guy Pearce, Ed Norton. They're all great, but I'm happy to see Kieran Culkin get it. And particularly because The Real Pain didn't get a lot of noms, I'm happy that it got something because it is a genuinely really great little film that is really enjoyable, and I really liked it.
I think the best supporting actor role should have gone to to John Cena for his role in Ricky Stenicki personally, because obviously the
Jesus
main actor was
Christ.
Zac Efron, but John Cena as supporting actor absolutely should have won that. Top tier performance in my opinion.
Maybe it could have been the belated win for his role in Barbie as like one of them. He was like a mermaid, wasn't he, for like 2 seconds or something.
He's everywhere.
He's everywhere. Anyway, uh, moving on to the animated stuff. So, best animated feature and short. The short, In the Shadow of Cypress, I haven't seen, so can't really comment on
Nah.
that. But congratulations to the winner. But best animated feature, I saw all five of them, well, no, all four of them. I didn't see Memoir of a Snail, which was one of the other ones, but the others, Inside Out 2, Wild Robot, Wallace and Gromit, got nominated, and I think all would have been quite worthy winners. I think we were kind of thinking The Wild Robot because it got a couple other noms, but it ultimately went to Flow, which is this independent film. It's got no dialogue. I mentioned it in the last episode, if you
Yeah,
remember.
you almost predicted it last episode. Yeah.
It was either going to be Wild Robot or Flow because also got an international feature nom because I can't remember which country. It's like a European film as well.
Okay.
Um, but Wild Robot got a few of the technical noms like score and sound, so it was going to be one of those two. But even though I prefer Wild Robot, I'm really happy it went to Flow because it's this it's a very independent film, no dialogue. It's just this like very simple but quite beautifully told story with great visuals and whatnot, great visual storytelling for an animated film. And it's not a kids film. It's not like they're trying to have like random celebrities and slapstick and pop culture references to keep the kids' attention. It's just a very maturely told story, but one that kids can definitely connect with and adults, really. I think anyone can. And it's these kind of films where it's like, animation is not just for kids. It is an art form. And I was really happy to see Flow get a win and to, shine a spotlight on it because it is such a lovely little film. I really loved it.
That's pretty cool. I only saw
Doesn't
two of
it?
the films nominated.
Yeah.
I saw Inside Out 2 and Wallace and Gromit. Out of those two, I'd
Mhm.
probably pick Wallace and Gromit.
Yeah. To be fair,
But
Wallace and Gromit got a couple of BAFTAs for animated.
yeah,
I remember. But yeah, I think all of them would have been a strong contender. Even like Inside Out, even though we don't like Disney, still a fantastic film. But I'm really happy it went to Flow to kind of spotlight the indie creators and not just the big studios all the time, not just like milking Disney's ego, basically, ostensibly. Next up,
yeah.
we have best costume design, which went to Wicked. I think it should have probably gone to this podcast.
Yeah,
This is this is clearly the best costumes, but because this is one of two awards Wicked got, and I think it was kind of a given. Wicked, based on a Broadway musical, costume design, it makes sense, and the costumes are amazing. All the Oz characters and like obviously Elphaba, the witch, and the Glinda, and it just looks so great and like very theatrical, very detailed, and just really imaginative. I'm very happy that it got that.
Did Deadpool and Wolverine get nominated for that one? Because I feel like the costumes in Deadpool and Wolverine were pretty good. I feel like the fact that Wolverine had a comic accurate costume and mask already is Oscar worthy.
It should have maybe that could have been the belated one for Logan, but no, the Deadpool and Wolverine didn't get anything.
That's a crime
Um,
right there. That is a crime. I mean,
it's fun, but I probably wouldn't personally. Maybe, I don't know.
yeah, no,
Um,
the other movies probably are better, but
yeah,
just most of them aren't usually my
yeah.
thing. I'm
I
definitely more
think
of the layman's kind of perspective here.
fair enough. I think but I think in terms of like having a layman's perspective, I suppose I think it is. I really love that Wicked got a lot of the recognition as a big as a this big popular film that lots of people went to see, and it's this fun you know Broadway musical show film. I'm glad that it got the attention, and I'm glad it got a couple of wins as well.
Yeah.
Um, but anyway, next up is the screenplay, so best original and best adapted. So for best original is the first award for Anora, which ultimately won the big prize, and that I talked about in the last episode in the classic movie section.
Yeah.
When I talked
Yeah.
about romance films, I talked about Nora before it won, and now it won. So that's even more incentive to go watch it. But yeah, best original screenplay went to Nora to Sean Baker, who won 4 Oscars for that damn film. Worthy because it is a fantastic film, as you know. I praised it in the last episode, and the screenplay is very witty. It's very great. It's got great humor and great sort of twists and turns throughout in the way it's structured and whatnot. But yeah, I think I'm happy to see Nora get some wins. And I think you were saying as well, like having again a layman's perspective, I feel like Nora does have more broad appeal than say some of the other more heavy films. Because Nora, yes, it is about like sex work and it is a kind of taboo topic, but it is also almost like a screwball comedy in like the second act. So it has this kind of broad appeal. And even though it's an indie film, it has that as a broad appeal, which I was happy to see. And then Best Adapted went to Conclave, which I'm not so sure about because I made it clear last episode, Conclave, I didn't really care for, if you
Yeah,
recall.
it's not the topic of film I'd be watching either, so I can't really say
Yeah.
much on it.
Um, yeah, I think I mean I think more of my issues come with how it's directed because it is a very sort of cold, distant film, and I couldn't really get connected into it. But I also felt like the screenplay maybe I think some of the dialogue felt very clunky and very on the nose and just felt very like the characters just all of a sudden became mouthpieces just to state their own sort of ideologies, and it didn't feel organic. It wasn't like the characters' thoughts were coming through just through conversation. It just felt like they were stopping to say a point, and it didn't feel organic. I personally would have given it to Complete Unknown, the Bob Dylan film, because that didn't get anything. Any
It didn't
wins, I
get
should say.
anything.
Yeah, because
Oh, okay.
Completely Unknown's a film that's kind of grown on me a bit more because of how it's structured as a biopic. It only covers like a very specific time in Bob Dylan's life in the early '60s before he became the Bob Dylan we know. And I think the way that that's structured and the way it really focuses on a time period and really fleshes it out in the script and the structure, I think maybe that's what I would have personally given it to. Um, but yeah, I mean, Conclave, I'm glad that, a lot of people really liked it. It just wasn't really my sort of thing. But yeah, it went home with one. So anyway, best makeup and hairstyling went to Substance. I talked about this briefly
Yes.
earlier.
Yeah.
Substance is another one that I feel like as this sort of, this horror, sort of body horror kind of film, this big, genre film, has a lot of mainstream appeal. And it was my favorite film of 2024. And, I'm glad that it went home with one award, and makeup and hairstyling, very obvious because it is this like creature feature kind of body horror film. Please do watch it because it's so good. And it's so entertaining as well. And I was really happy to see these films like Anora, Substance, Wicked, even Doom, which we'll get to later. Some more films that have appeal. Some of them like Conclave, for example, is very heavy, and yeah, it's technically very good, but just do I really fancy watching it? Not really.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah, I think that's sometimes the trouble. And I do, even though I know a lot of these like, Oscar films, I also recognize that, it can sometimes feel a bit kind of um niche in a way.
Yeah, sometimes it's like
Yeah.
these super, artsy films that end up
Mhm.
winning that the average guy doesn't really want to
Yeah.
watch.
It's a
Obviously,
bit
we
heavy.
discussed though last year how surprised we were surprised at how many people went to watch Oppenheimer though.
Yeah. I
So
think
that was
that
quite a
that's an
heavy one.
yeah, but I think it's obviously Nolan directing and that Barbenheimer meme and whatnot.
The Barbenheimer
But I
really
am
did help,
Yeah,
but
but I am what I think it is. Obviously, that kind of got people into the seats, but also people love the film because it is such a good film. It's such a compelling watch.
yeah,
Even people who aren't into science and politics, people got into it and could connect with, Cillian Murphy's performance, and people could really connect with it. And so, even though it is a heavy film, people could connect with it. And I think it's great. It was great to see that. And I feel like there are some films, like I mentioned, that I think people can connect with if they, give it the chance. And I hope people do. Yeah. But back on track with the different categories. Best editing, the second win for Nora. If you remember, I mentioned that I thought editing was really great in Nora, didn't I?
yeah.
If you recall, because I remember I mentioned this in my editing module at uni. Lecturers recommended we watch like Sean Baker films and whatnot because he edits them as well as writing and directing.
Okay.
And I think the thing is, Honora was the clear front runner for me because it does something beyond just having good editing that makes the film flow. It also has style. It's almost like an art form in itself to Sean Baker. It really puts you in the headspace of the characters, and it kind of the way it's edited communicates like this exciting, lifestyle when Nora meets Ivan, who's the Russian prince that she falls for and whatnot. This kind of hedonistic life, the editing, the fast pace of it all, it really reflects that. And it goes one step beyond just being it flows well. And that's why I think it was worthy of the Oscar. I think of all of Honora's attributes, I think best editing, I think absolutely needed to get it. Yeah. Next up, best supporting actress for Amelia Perez, Zoe Saldana. To play devil's advocate here, if there was anything that I had to give it to, it would be that because Zoe Saldana is a great actress as is, great in obviously Guardians of the Galaxy as Gamora. Um, but and she was probably the best part of the film. Her performance was fine, not Oscar worthy. Ariana Grande was snubbed, in my humble opinion.
I
I,
mean,
I genuinely think that.
yeah, you can play devil's advocate, but I would say her acting in that one particular song we discussed last episode is enough reason to say she didn't deserve it. Can we clip that? Can we clip that on there?
Hello, very nice to meet you. I'd like to know about sex change operation.
I see. men to woman or woman to men.
Man to woman.
From penis to vagina. Is it for you?
For me.
What would you like to know about it, madam?
I want to know it all. What is the protocol? The techniques and the risks. How many operations? How much time do you need?
Mammoplasty.
Yes.
Vaginoplasty.
Yes.
Rhinoplasty.
Yes.
Laryngoplasty.
Yes.
Mammoplasty. Vaginoplasty.
Yes.
Rhinoplasty.
Yes.
Laryngoplasty.
Yes.
Control laryngoplasty.
What is that?
Adam's apple reduction.
Yes, yes, yes!
The original song, oh God. I mean, luckily it was not that song, but I'll just skip one of them. The best original song was also to Amelia Perez for the song El Mal, which was
let's
a bit...
just get the Amelia Perez stuff out the way with.
Yeah, we just get... Yeah, because I don't want to talk about this shit again.
No.
Why is this... Why is this...
Rants too.
Auto-tune shit just wins? Like, what? No. I mean, the funny thing is they didn't even perform the original song nominees, probably because they'd have to perform this shit, and nobody wants to hear that unless they want to keep their ears from bleeding. It's just what... I mean, of all the songs, it's probably the best, but that's not saying much. And I think, honestly, it's more so down to like some of the choreography in that number, which is actually not too bad, than the actual song. Because, no. And also the Oscar win when the recipients started singing the bloody song. And it's just like, why?
Then
Why?
Rants on Amelia Perez Part 2. Clip that.
Anyway, let's move on because we could talk about Wicked again because now the next award, I'm so glad I got that out of the system now. But the next award went to
Purge
Wicked.
it out.
Yeah, just get it out. Yeah. Next one was the best production design, which went to Wicked. Again, similar to costumes, it's a Broadway musical. Obviously, the sets and whatnot, absolutely worthy of it because the way they put together Oz and also the Shiz University, it's so good, so imaginative, and it's just like Wicked is one of those films that I just loved it and how like it felt. There was this like wonder about it all, like it felt like actual magic, as they were exploring all these environments, and it was just some of them and how it lends and how the production as well lends itself to some of the creative numbers as well. There's like the library where there's like the sort of spinning clock, and it's like really cool, and the dance ball, and obviously as mentioned Oz, and it's just amazing. It's just amazing. I really want to watch Wicked on stage as well. After I really do. I really want to watch it. I kind of but yeah, absolutely worthy winners. I think of those are the two categories. A bit like Anora with editing, those are the two categories that Wicked had in the bag, and if it didn't get them, I'd be a bit pissy about it.
Yeah.
And I also Ariana should have got a supporting actor because she was amazing. Oh, actress, sorry, she was amazing. Yeah. Anyway, moving on to the best documentary categories, which again we don't really have much stake in. I think they're still worthy of recognizing. So we have best documentary short, which, funny enough, I actually watched.
Okay.
So it's a documentary called The Only Girl in the Orchestra. It's on Netflix, and that's basically why I watched it.
Right.
But it's about what's her name? Bloody hell! What is her name? It's about the documentary. It's about Orrin O'Brien, and she was the first female bassist in the New York Philharmonic Orchestra back in the 60s, and the film is made by I think one of her relatives, basically. It's an interesting subject, I will give it that, but it's made in a very bog standard documentary way, and yeah, it's very, very standard, so quite middle of the road. But then best documentary feature went to No Other Land, which is to do with the Gaza war. Obviously, we won't get too political on here.
Yeah.
But I think I don't want to make. I think this is quite an important win because the film is made in like a collaboration between a Palestinian and Israeli filmmaker.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And it's been getting a lot of like love, this documentary has, and to see them on stage and to kind of like seeing them together, I think was really special.
Oh yeah, I can see that definitely.
I do think that was, and I always think in terms of like politics at the Oscars and whatnot, I think it's an interesting thing, and I understand when people say, actors and the Oscars shouldn't be political and whatnot, and like I get it if it's like John Cena saying, "Oi, stop climate change, you bastard." I get I get that if it's like that. I get that if it's like that.
Okay.
But you know what I mean? If it's like that, I get that why some people it might seem out of touch. But when it's like documentary filmmakers who are often have very low budgets, they're not like Hollywood A-listers, documentary filmmakers aren't. Their films aren't like made for cinemas. They're not really making it for money. They're making it to get a point across. And I say they're not the Hollywood elite. A lot of documentary makers are. Very few are. So I think if anyone has the right to um, has the right to make a political statement in that sort of way, I think it's them. But even then, I don't think, coming together as people, it should be political. I think that's just human decency.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, that went really serious then for a second. Let's just get back to the goofy shit now.
Yeah.
But I did want to get that. I think that's an important. I just wanted to,
Oh yeah, no,
I think,
yeah. Like,
yeah.
yeah.
Because even though I haven't seen Northernland, but I absolutely want to check it out. Because I do think that was very special to see that on stage. But yeah, next the next two categories now we have next two wins went to Doom Part Two, which if you remember, I think it was in the last Clacker Chronicles podcast, when Dune had only just come out, we were like, "Oh, Dune's gonna sweep this awards." It barely got any nominations. It barely got anything. Like it didn't get a Best Director nom for Denis Villeneuve. Like, did he like shoot someone at the Academy to not get a nomination? I don't know. But either way, it got best sound and more importantly, best visual effects, which absolutely worthy of. Obviously, best sound with the sandworms and a lot of the alien sort of, sounds to kind of immerse you in that world. And especially with the VFX, some of those, it looks gorgeous. It's a stunning film and obviously, immerse you in all these different worlds and creatures. And, it's this big sci-fi epic. It's like Lord of the Rings for sci-fi in a way. And, visual effects absolutely deserved. But yeah, I was happy to see that. And again, it was like Anora, Substance, Wicked, and Doom Part 2, I think, is another one of those where, it's a big sci-fi epic where it has that mainstream appeal.
Yeah.
So I think absolutely worthy. I think those ones are. Yeah. I remember, I don't think you've not seen the Dune duology, have you?
Not yet, no. I haven't seen
Mhm.
any of the movies that were nominated for Best Picture this year. Time constraints with work and everything.
Fair
I
fair
haven't,
enough.
and to watch Doom Part 2, I'd have to watch Doom Part 1, and both of them
Yeah.
are like 3 hours, and that's a little much
They're
on my
long,
schedule
yeah.
at the moment. But
Like I do, like I remember because I did watch the first one when it came out in cinemas, and I remember when the second came out, I was going to try and rewatch the first one just to kind of refresh my memory. Got it on Netflix on my iPad, and I couldn't. You can't watch Dune on an iPad. Like you need to watch it on a big screen, like a TV. You can't watch it on. It just it doesn't work. It's such a rich film. I get, yeah. Um, but the next ones, we got a best live action short film for I'm Not a Robot. I haven't seen it, so can't really comment, but I
Me neither.
congratulate the winner.
yeah.
Yeah. Then we get it's kind of like going in waves. So we had like a couple of wins for like Nora, a couple for Wicked, a couple for Dune. Now we've got a couple of wins for The Brutalist, which is
Okay, yeah.
obviously the big 3.5 hour epic. Adrian Brody starred, and he got obviously the Oscar, which we'll get to in a bit. But again, a very heavy film, but very well made, and it got best cinematography. Which also, fun fact, as a Midlander, the guy who won it is born in Shrewsbury, which I think is really cool.
Oh, okay.
Lol Crawley, he's a Shrewsbury-born cinematographer. I think that's really cool. I personally would have given cinematography to Nosferatu because not only did it not win anything, and it would have been nice to have something, but I mentioned it when we talked about Nosferatu. The cinematography in that is really unique in like some of the tricks that it does, like some of the lens like focusing tricks I've had to like blur out Orlok so he's scarier, and some of the movements are quite unique and strange. And I think I would have preferred that to win, but Brutalist does look gorgeous with the cinematography, so I'll give it that. And it also won best score, which again I'm in agreement with because it is a very powerful but minimalist score, but it really works.
Yeah.
So yeah. I'm just glad that the score didn't go to Emilia Perez for some auto-tune shit.
Uh,
At this rate, the Minecraft movie is going to be better than Emilia Perez, and I cannot believe I'm saying that. I genuinely can't believe it. But yeah, the Brutalist cinematography. I'm glad that we got some local wins for the Midlands.
yeah.
And also in Brutalist, Felicity Jones, who was a Birmingham-born actress, she was in that film.
Oh yeah.
So it's great to have that. I always love seeing Midlands talent anywhere. I think as I'm getting older, I'm like trying to really embrace that. You know,
We got some Midland talent right here on this podcast.
Well, exactly. Yeah. I mean, we should
The
start
greatest
the
movie
double.
podcast in the West Midlands.
Woo! Yeah, the Wicked Witch of the West Midlands. That's me. I wanted to. If we did the Wicked podcast, I would have made that joke. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But yeah, now the final few awards, just got some of the big ones now. So, best international feature went to I'm Still Here. It's a Brazilian film. It was also up for Best Picture. But the main reason I'm happy about this, I haven't seen it, but it's meant to be very good. But also, Emily Perez not only got Best Picture on, but was also in international. And a lot of us were thinking, with how many nominations Emily Perez got, we were like, oh, is that going to get another one with international? But we were so happy that I'm Still Here was like the only challenger to it. And I'm so glad it won. And again, it's meant to be great. And I think the thing is, like, Brazilian cinema is meant to be really good. Because I watched I had to watch it for my film class, like City of God, which is another Brazilian film.
Okay.
But like, I think Brazilian cinema is meant to be really good. So I really look forward to check that out.
Anything to stop Amelia from winning.
Anything. It's like that bit from Rise of Skywalker. It's like, I don't care if you win. I just want Emily Perez to lose. It's like, yeah. And then we've got the big ones: Best Actor, Actress, Director, and Picture. So we got Best Actor went to Adrian Brody. I can't speak. Adrian Brody for The Brutalist in genuinely the longest Oscar speech ever. It was like over 5 minutes.
I've heard it's long.
I mean, it was quite appropriate for The Brutalist with how long that film was. That his speech was it's quite appropriate. It was a nice sentiment in his speech, but like it was a bit. It did go on a bit, even though I got to admit. But he's a great actor, and he gave a brilliant performance in The Brutalist. I agreed with that pick. I think he was fantastic in it, and just next time you win, Adrian, try and keep it
a little bit.
Succinct, succinct. You don't need to waffle on, yeah. And then the final three went to Anora. So we got Best Director for Sean Baker, Best Actress for Mikey Madison, beating out Demi Moore for The Substance, who was kind of the favourite to win. And then it obviously won Best Picture. So, yeah, I think we kind of talk about these last three as one, I suppose. Yeah. So Sean Baker winning director again, great. Obviously, I talked about Anora, how amazing it was. I think the filmmaking in Anora is great. I maybe would have liked to see the director of The Substance win, Collie Faget. I think I may have butchered that name, but I think because The Substance didn't get as much, and also because Sean Baker ended up with 4 Oscars alone, did he maybe need that many? Maybe not. But I'm still happy for him. But I maybe would have gone for Substance for Best Director, maybe because that film was very visual as well and really carried by its visual vision and direction.
Visual vision.
Visual vision.
Visual vision.
Brilliant
terminology there.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, very academic, And then obviously we had Mikey Madison win Best Actress, and it was between her and Demi Moore for The Substance. And the thing is, I would have been happy with either winning, but for very different reasons. Like Demi Moore, a veteran actress who was often relegated to a lot of lowbrow kind of commercial sort of stuff. So her getting a prestige role and getting a lot of awards buzz, I think would have been great. But Mikey Madison as a great young new talent, I love the fact that they are recognizing younger talent and not just like I think that's great. And she was amazing in Anora, and she really did carry it. Because the thing is, people have criticized the film for maybe not making Annie, her character, the most well written, and to a degree, I agree with that. I think she could be more fleshed out, but it really hinges on her amazing performance because she really does carry that film, and it was great. And then obviously, Best Picture went to Anora, which we talked about. Well, I talked about it, and you can go check that out in the last episode. But yeah, I'm really happy that it won because even though it wasn't quite my favorite, I think it was the one that I was rooting for because it's maybe not the best, but it's the one that kind of represents the year the best with its subject matter, of sex work, and also we live in it's a very contemporary feeling film with the atmosphere that it creates, and also its subject matter, and we live in quite a sexed up society, I would say. It's true. I know we kind of smirk and chuckle about it, but it is true, and I think if you don't kind of confront these taboo subjects, because it's not a squeaky clean subject, and it's not going to be the most virtuous thing. And I think in the real world, if you go through that, you realize that, and I think that's why I really appreciate what Nora did. But it also shows a great deal of empathy, particularly with Annie, I think. Um, and it's it's got a lot of conversation. A lot of people. It's not a it's not a squeaky clean film. It's not a it's not one that everyone will gel with. But it's a very bold, out there film. But I really respect it for that, and I think it's more than deserving of it. And I think, as I said earlier, it has a lot of mainstream appeal, with the kind of comedic angle of the film and how contemporary it feels. Comparing that to like Conclave or Brutalist, which are quite heavy films that I don't think people would actively go and watch. I think Anora could be like like a Midnight Cowboy, which won back in the 60s and whatnot. That's a film, it has a lot of taboo stuff about sex and that film does. But a lot of people love that film. And I think Anora is a great worthy winner in that sense.
Yeah.
And with that, I covered all of the damn Oscar categories. Do I get an Oscar for like I've got back pains from carrying that segment?
Yeah, but as you get an Oscar for presenting the Oscar stuff, but as the only presenter of the Oscars, you've automatically got the Razzie for the same thing. So
Screw you. The ironic thing is we've covered more of the Razzie nominations than the Oscar.
No.
Like Joker 2, Megalopolis, Unfrosted, Madam Web, the Ronald Reagan movie that Dennis Quaid did. He was also in The Substance, so he appeared in one of the best and one of the worst movies of the year.
So,
I think Megalopolis won the Razzie for like worst film. I don't think it should have though. I really don't think it should have.
No. So
Should have
final
gone to
thoughts on
Megamind.
this should have gone to Megamind. No.
Well, it should have done. Was it not the worst film you watched in 2024?
It was, to be fair.
Yeah, but in terms you're saying overall,
Overall, final thoughts on the Oscars for this part.
generally, I think it went very smooth overall. I think most of the winners, aside from the Emilia Perez ones, I was happy with, and also the Conclave one. Maybe not as emotionally charged. Like if you remember when Everything Everywhere at Once won a couple of years back, I think a lot of those wins, like Takiki Kwan and Michelle Yeoh and the directors in that film, because it's such a bonkers film, and a lot of those actors, had kind of, especially Ki Kwan, like that, his win was so emotionally charged, and I genuinely really felt it. I don't think we've quite had that. I think because it's gone as smooth as it has, I think you don't quite have those high highs, but also not those low lows. Like,
Yeah.
But overall, yeah, I'm happy with it. I think Conan did very well. It was a solid broadcast, and yeah, I like some of the variety here. It's not just like one movie dominating. I think the awards spread out a bit more evenly, and I hope that people will be able to check out, films like Anora and Substance, and other ones like Flow. I absolutely, go check them out, and I that's great.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, a
Yeah,
lot
and
of
a real pain. Another one.
yeah, obviously, a lot of
What were you
the
saying?
movies I haven't necessarily seen. A lot of the ones I have seen aren't ones that are going to get Oscars. Like I could say
Yeah.
things like, "Oh, Sonic 3 should have got some nominations." I don't know why he didn't get any. To be
Well,
fair,
the funny
it's
thing was is that one of there was a cinematography nomination. There was a film called Maria.
oh no.
It was the only nomination it got, but I think it was Angelina Jolie or something. It got a cinematography nom. But people were saying, "Hey, Sonic 3 got something." Yeah.
But no, it would have been nice to see that get something, just if not at least for visuals. I think it would be interesting as well if they did a new category for voice acting. That could be an
I think
interesting
that'd be
one
good.
because I think Keanu
You
did
know what
really
category?
good in Sonic 3.
True. You know what category I quite like to see, maybe.
Yeah.
I quite like to see a lighting, best lighting category.
Okay.
Because I think there's a real art form. Because I think Wicked was a film that a lot of people criticized for its lighting and how flat it looked at times. And to a degree, I will agree with that. It didn't break it for me, but I understand why people say it. And great lighting can really make or break a film, and it can really elevate a film. And as somebody who obviously does like filmmaking at uni and whatnot, lighting is such a tricky thing to get right. So I think that should get recognized. I would say.
Mm,
Mhm.
yeah. Also, another year without an Oscars category for stuntmen.
Yeah, true.
Maybe 1 year that will come up. I thought maybe The Fall Guy would do something to help that, but considering the
Maybe.
whole point
I
is
mean, I
about
think
stuntmen.
I'm pretty sure at the last ceremony they had like Ryan Gosling and Emily Blunt do a little montage for stunt people.
Oh yeah.
But they also had him do I'm Just Ken, so that was the biggest stunt of the
Yeah.
lot. That was so. Oh man, I loved. I still go back to that I'm Just Ken performance, and I think that's the
Yeah.
thing with this year's. I don't think we quite have like the I'm Just Ken performance or Ke Huy Quan's speech, or some of those really impactful, emotional, or really entertaining moments. Like it was a
John
smooth
Cena
ceremony.
naked on the stage.
That I couldn't. I did see that live last year, and I couldn't actually believe it. I was like, I had to double take. He's like, is that actually happening? I think what's what? I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe
Yeah.
that they got like
John Cena got
an
snubbed
envelope
this
to.
year.
Couldn't
John
believe
Cena
they got
got
an envelope
snubbed.
to go on stage on its
Yeah,
own.
the envelope. It's
It's an envelope on stage on its own. Yeah. But yeah, overall, very smooth ceremony. If maybe not having the high points that some of the other ceremonies have had in
yeah.
previous years.
I think like I'd love to have said something like, oh, maybe Transformers One for animated, but I know it's not the same caliber as like the other films. But the one film I think
Mhm.
this year that I've got to be pretty brief on this one because of the time for
Yeah.
part two. But
Oh
the
yeah.
one film I watched last year that I think I don't know if it got nominations, but I would have liked to have seen it get something was Quiet Place Day One. I think there's a lot of
Oh
really
yeah.
good parts in there. Lead actress, supporting actor, direction. I think there's a
Hmm.
lot that works really well with it, and I think it would have been nice to see it get something. I don't know if it got
Yeah.
nominated for anything. I didn't read
It
it
didn't
all.
get not any Oscars anyway. I think you've got to
Yeah,
remember the Oscars generally don't care about horror films. I mean, this year was a bit of an exception with The Substance and also Nosferatu getting a bit of love.
yeah,
It would have been nice to see Quiet Place Day One, but I think because it's also part of a franchise, I think they're
yeah,
also maybe a bit iffy on that as well.
yeah, maybe.
Um,
But I think
but I
there is
do,
a
yeah,
lot good
maybe.
there that I would have
Hmm,
liked to see get some attention at the
yeah,
Oscars. But other than
yeah,
that, I can't really say too much else there.
yeah. I think you got to remember, like, I know that the Oscars are kind of, you know, it's not a perfect system. I'm well aware of that, but I do like celebrating a lot of the less mainstream films, and I do like checking them out and also seeing what they're like, and kind of giving attention to them, especially Anora, and The Substance. Those two that if you haven't seen them, I couldn't recommend them enough.
Yeah,
But yeah, because I think anyone can really enjoy them. But that's our present day Oscar discussion. Now let's go to the past.
and we're
It's
back.
picture time, baby.
Part three. Let's go.
Yeah. So we decided for this one, I think, because obviously the Oscars, we are going to talk about three previous Best Picture winners from years gone by. So I'll start off first because I already mentioned that, the one I was going to talk about in honor of
Yeah,
the late Gene Hackman, 1971's The French Connection, which directed by William Friedkin. And I was so adamant on picking a film from the 1970s because the 70s is an era which it's one of the most influential eras in filmmaking. It's like the late 1960s into the 70s. They call it sort of New Hollywood. And it was like the death of the old golden age studio system where films were very like homogenized and a lot of these kind of very samey films. And it's where a lot of like auteur filmmakers and a lot of these kind of more creatively driven films were made. It's where filmmakers like Martin Scorsese, Francis Ford Coppola, William Friedkin from French Connection, even like Spielberg, George Lucas, like Jaws and Star Wars. But it's where a lot of these filmmakers came into fruition, and creating more challenging kind of films and that explored more taboo, edgy, controversial topics too, like drugs and sex and violence and whatnot. And the French Connection is a very typical film of that era. It's a film, sort of police procedural crime thriller. You stars Gene Hackman obviously as Doyle, who's a detective in Brooklyn, and he's basically trying to. But it's quite a simple film on paper. It's pretty much just like him trying to bust this drug operation that connects from Brooklyn to France. Hence the French Connection as the title. But it's how it's done. It's such a great film and it's so entertaining. It's such a great thriller. And the filmmaking is like, it's on point. Like, whether it's the first half, which is pretty atmospheric and slow paced, but it kind of builds the tension really well. Like, there's this great scene where Doyle, he's in a bar with his mate, what's his name? Russo, played by Roy Scheider, who's in Jaws, who's Brody in Jaws. But they're in like a bar and they're trying to get out who they're trying to look for, and the way it's edited, It's so good. And Hackman, as I mentioned earlier, as great of an actor he is, he's fantastic in The French Connection as well. Like he just commands these scenes. Like there's a bit when he's in a bar and he's trying to like bust like who's got what he needs, the information, and he just carries that scene. It's brilliant. But also the filmmaking, like the visual filmmaking, so like cinematography, it's so good how it captures this atmosphere in Brooklyn, this kind of like dirty, grimy city and whatnot. The editing is so fast paced. It's quite a ferociously paced film with some of the action scenes, like the chases down the street, the tracking shots down the streets as you follow the characters, like trying to walk down. It's so good. And it also has one of the best chase sequences ever put to film with the car chase that's chasing the train. It is, you've got to watch that. Just that sequence alone. It is so ferociously paced. It's just so quick. It's so rough. Like you've got Friedkin like filming from the backseat of Hackman's car. He's just driving it like it feels like 100 miles an hour, and he's like actually like crashing into cars because that actually happened. Like he was actually crashing into cars on the streets. But it feels so raw and real, and that's what you kind of miss from a lot of films nowadays. It's so rough edges. These like rough edges. It's so rough and tumble and kind of like almost like guerrilla filmmaking, but it's so good, and like the ending shootout is brilliant. But yeah, I say it's an excellent film. It's not too overly complicated, but it's such a fun watch, and you'd love it, I can guarantee.
Cool. I'm
Mhm.
gonna have to check that one out.
Oh, please, and in honor of Hackman as well, because this is probably his defining role. But what I also want to mention with the '70s films, and this is just like an example, because there's so many like the first two Godfathers, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, Rocky, The Deer Hunter. So many of these films, yes, they got Best Picture noms and wins and whatnot, but they were also some of the biggest money makers of their year. So I think French Connection made the most money of 1971 of films. Godfather won obviously Best Picture, but also made so much money. Rocky did as well, and I believe Rocky is one of your films, isn't it?
Yeah, we're keeping in the
Yeah.
70s here. I watched Rocky because
Hmm.
Rocky is but there's a lot of Rocky movies. I like all the Rocky movies. Even the fifth one. A lot of people don't like that one as much. I do like that one. Not as much as the others, but I still think it's alright.
Yeah.
But I thought, okay, well, Rocky one won a Best Picture, so I watched it again last night.
1976.
76, yep.
Yeah.
And yeah, it is a really good film. It's the main misconception, particularly with the first film, is that people think it's a film about boxing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And in the later films, that's absolutely what it is. But in the first film, that's really just kind of a tangent to it. That's a side point of it. The main thing is just
Like
about
it.
this character of Rocky, who's like, to
Mhm.
begin with, he's not a nice guy. He lives in a rough part of Philadelphia. He works beating people up to collect money for a loan shark. He's really rough around the edges, but he kind of strikes up this relationship
Romance.
with Adrian, and and a lot of the film is just kind of about him kind of changing, but also just kind of like the idea of and I think this is echoed a lot in later films of that it's about how to kind of keep going through the fight
Yeah.
and
Never
going
giving
the
up. Never giving
distance,
up.
never giving up.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, you can be like the scrappy underdog or whatever, and sure you might have no chance of winning, but you keep going.
Mhm. I think that I'm really glad that you picked Rocky to talk about because there's so much that I want to talk about. And, kind of following on from what I said about 70s films, yes, they were very, big moneymakers, but particularly like late 60s, early 70s films. A lot of these big films that you were getting, a lot of the characters weren't very nice people, and they were people who you wouldn't want to aspire to be like. So,
Yeah.
because the thing is, like, that era of like just history, a lot of the public were very disillusioned. You had like obviously civil rights movement, Vietnam, the kind of youth culture of that time. They were like the baby boomer generation. They were finally growing up and they were kind of disillusioned with things at the time. And that's why you get a lot of these kind of this kind of disillusionment with society and like what was kind of the quite traditional 1950s and whatnot. It starts to break this kind of illusion, like the American dream of everything's perfect. That breaks in that time, and cinema of that time reflects that. So, someone like Doyle, yes, he's a cop, but he's like a loose cannon cop, and he's kind of a bit unstable. And he's a bit sort of, he has to kind of almost give into his shitty environment. Pardon my French, but he kind of has to give into that to win the day. But then you've got characters like the Corleone family and the Godfathers, this crime family. They're not aspirational figures. Travis Bickle in Taxi Driver, the Scorsese film of that time, same as Rocky. Travis Bickle, he's this loner who tries to like shoot someone to like save a prostitute. He's not an aspirational figure. Rocky Balboa is, and I think we've got to remember, 70s America losing like Vietnam. They're coming out of that. They kind of don't have like they don't really have anything to aspire to. And then you have this underdog story with Rocky. It's kind of almost like rags to riches story where it's a really sincere film, and it's like it's somebody that everybody can get behind. Everyone can get behind this guy who, starts from nothing, and through sheer hard work and determination, he makes it big. And and it's also his love for Adrian that I think is what people can really get behind, because that is what fuels him to go for it. I would say, and so that's why. And I think that's the thing with Rocky is that it is probably one of the most crowd pleasing Oscar winners I think of all time. And I think this is where you really see a turning point with this. Jaws come out near that time. Star Wars came out near that time. More, people wanted that like hopeful ending, I think.
Yeah.
Some films, and I think Rocky really represents that turning point. I would say, but it's also just a brilliantly made film. Stallone writing the script and acting in it, he's phenomenal. The montage, of course, is iconic, but it's just a great bit of filmmaking with it, and also with the music and the final scene when he shouts out Adrian. I know that might sound piss takey, but when he does it, it's such a heartfelt scene. I love it.
Yeah. I think there's a lot about the film that feels quite kind of raw rather than like like the glamour a lot of other movies have. Like the area of like Philly it's in is like disgusting. He's training in a meat freezer. It's he's at this awful kind of rundown gym as well that doesn't look fancy in the slightest. It's very.
I was going to say it's quite a low budget film as well.
Oh yeah, it was pretty low budget.
Obviously, of course, the sequels obviously got bigger budgets, but the original was quite this kind of like little indie film, wasn't it? Really.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
It's obviously Rocky franchise changed a lot onwards, and by like the 80s, he's fighting Mr. T. He's fighting Ivan Drago, and isn't he like a robot in one of them? Was it the fourth one? The fourth one has a robot in that Stallone really didn't like, and he cut that out of the director's version. But gotta respect the robot. He just comes in happy birthday, Polly. That's another thing. A lot of the characters in the first movie aren't nice. Like, Rocky's not nice to begin with. Paulie is quite horrible in the first film. Apollo just sees it as a easy win that he can just beat up some local guy and go home. He doesn't care about the idea of it being like a good match or anything. He just wants to get in there, get his win, and leave. Even his coach Mickey is not that nice to begin with. He's very reluctant to help Rocky to begin with. But it's just it's an interesting way. It feels more real in a way. With how
definitely.
Kind of. I want to say it's almost kind of, I don't know if it's the right word, gritty a little bit with
I think that's right. It is gritty, yeah.
But obviously the later films are a lot more kind of polished and glamorous. I mean, Rocky 4 is just like so leaps and bounds different to the first one that Rocky 4, it is basically, this is a boxing movie. It's short, it's got a simple storyline, but it's so fun and feel good. But the first movie, there's definitely a lot more kind of depth to it.
It sort of feels more earnest, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's a lot more low key. Like, basically, the way the films are kind of reflects the way Rocky is as he goes through the films. He starts off really poor, and he's very the first film's very low budget. It's earnest, and then you get to the later ones where he's a bigger name. He's more of a mega star. The films are more bigger budget and everything. It kind of like tracks with him the way the films are. Which it's an interesting thing. But I do love the Rocky films.
Definitely, yeah. I need to give the first one a rewatch because I haven't watched it in a few years, but it is a classic and rightly deserved its win back in the day.
We need to rank these at some point. We need to rank the Rocky films on one episode.
That's a good shout.
Anyway, I guess ping pong it back to you.
Yeah. So I'm going to go. I tried to go for with my three films. Try to go for films of very different eras. So I got one from the 70s. We're going to go way back to the 1940s now. We're going way back now. And again, I wanted to talk about this one because I feel like it was a very relevant film of its culture of the time. From 1946, it's The Best Years of Our Lives, directed by William Wyler. And 1946 has a lot of great films. It's a Wonderful Life came out that year, which is one of my all-time favorites. But The Best Years of Our Lives, very interesting because it's about three World War II veterans, Fred, Al, and Homer. They're returning home. It's a long film, but it covers these guys' lives and how they return back to their home. So Al, he's returning to his wife and daughter, and he's quite a wealthy man. You know, even though he's in the army, he's quite wealthy. You've got Fred, who is kind of your like he's kind of the lead. He's kind of like your everyman. He returns home to his girlfriend, who because now he can't provide because he doesn't have a job because he's out of the army. He can't really provide for her, and obviously at the time, you know, the man was the provider, and
Yeah.
that was just how it went. And so he kind of has this crisis of like identity, and his girlfriend just leaves him, and it's really horrible to watch. But the most heartbreaking, I think, is Homer, played by Harold Russell, who he lost his arms in the war, and the actor who actually played him also lost his arms in the war as well. He
Oh,
actually
okay.
won. He won actually two Oscars for this film, one for Best Supporting Actor, but he also won like an honorary Oscar because of it. But my God, there's scenes with him, and it's absolutely heartbreaking to watch. There's even thinking about it actually is making me a bit teary-eyed
Okay,
because
I mean, I'm actually interested in
yeah,
this one. I might have to
it
check
gen
this one out.
it's fantastic. It's honestly it's a proper golden oldie. This is but yeah, Homer's story is probably the most emotionally charged. There's a scene um and obviously his situation is horrible, but it's the kindness shown by so many of those around him. Like his girlfriend, there's a scene where it's like his girlfriend like tucks him in the bed because he has to like take his arms sort of off, like his prosthetic arms off, and then she
Ah,
tucks
yeah.
him in, and it's absolutely, pardon my French, fucking beautiful. It's genuinely one of the most beautiful scenes I've ever watched, and it is. I absolutely love it, and also as well in terms of like that kindness shown to other people, the kindness shown to Fred by Al's daughter Peggy, who sort of falls for him. And I won't obviously go how it ends up, but it's again the kindness that she shows to him. Like there's a bit where he has like a nightmare, like PTSD nightmare over the war, and it's so well shot. But she, you know, just comforts him about it, and that's the thing. I think I had this like for like years. I had this kind of misconception that a lot of like older movies they were very outdated. They were very, you know, kind of, you know, they were very distant. No, these films, you know, show these values of just like being kind to each other and having empathy for others and whatnot. And you know, that's something that still is something we should go to like aspire to like 80 years on.
Oh, yeah, definitely. That's something
You
we
know,
should always aspire to. That's a
yeah,
timeless
absolutely.
thing.
Yeah, exactly. And I think seeing a film like this, that is why this film has stood the test of time. In spite of maybe a couple of the little like colloquialisms of its time, it's still absolutely worthy of watching. And yes, it's a nearly 3 hour long film, but a bit like Oppenheimer, even though yes, it's a long film and quite heavy, you can really connect with it with how you connect with the characters. And it's a very human story. There's great bits of humor and whatnot. Like there's a bit where they go on like a party, like a little night out, and Al's a bit drunk, he can't get to the stairs and whatnot. It's you know, there's these like little human moments, and it makes it such a lovely watch. And you know, I love like Hollywood films of this era, but Best Years of My Lives is absolutely incredible. And actually, interestingly, a bit like Anora, how I said that film is very relevant to its time, and that's why I'm glad it won, even if it wasn't my favorite from 2024. Best Years of Our Lives, not my favorite of that year because It's a Wonderful Life I do prefer, which was also nominated. But I do think Best Years of Our Lives is the more important film of that time, having just come off the back of World War II. But yeah, I think absolutely go and watch this if you've never seen it. Even though like don't let the runtime intimidate you because it's a brilliant watch and it ages like a fine wine well after you've watched it. So yeah,
Bro.
yeah. Yeah, it's a brilliant film. Love it. And I've wanted to talk about that one for a while because I watched it last year and never didn't cover it in like my sort of, you know, monthly film rankings and whatnot. But I'm so glad that I got the chance to cover it here and talk about it because it's amazing. Yeah, highly recommend that one. So, pinging back to you, what do you got?
So I've got my next film. Let me just. I think it was 1994. 94.
Forrest Gump.
Forrest Gump. Yes.
Yeah, because slightly breaking the illusion. Mr. L did tell me some of the ones he was going to talk about. He told me Rocky, he told me Forrest Gump,
I
and
wanted
I
to
did watch
dispose
Forrest
of
Gump this week.
you to make sure that we didn't go over each other. And then, like, for
Yeah.
some of the other ones, we said what decade it was so that we knew, oh, well,
Yeah.
if you've not touched in this decade, then for now, so I know I'm fine. Because
Yeah. But
we
yeah.
wanted to keep some surprises, but we wanted to also
Yeah.
make
Yeah.
sure that we didn't pick the same things. Because I've only watched a very
Mhm.
limited number of Best Picture
Yeah.
winners, and I didn't have time to watch too many more new ones.
Yeah. I didn't
I
want to
wanted to
tread
make
over
sure
your
I got
toes
these
in that
in.
sort of sense.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I
But yeah,
went for
Forrest
Forrest
Gump.
Gump, yes, because I have seen it before, but I did watch it again last weekend because it has been a
Mhm.
long time. And boy, it hits differently. About like 8 years later, it hits differently.
Oh yeah.
I was quite young when I saw it because basically the story is I went to America. Bubba Gump Shrimp Co. is an actual restaurant chain.
Really?
Yeah, and they've got one at the Universal City Walk in Florida. They've got one at Daytona, and it's like
You're
we went to
kidding.
these. Yeah, Bubba Gump Shrimp Co. was yeah, there's a real chain restaurant over there. So
That's amazing.
and everything in there is decked out with like theming from Forrest Gump. The
I love
menu
that.
items, the kids' meals came in these little cardboard Jenny boats and everything, and they
Really?
served all these kinds of shrimp. All the kinds of shrimp that Bubba listed were all in the
Bubba.
restaurant. It was like it's completely themed out restaurant franchise. Yeah. So we went to these Bubba Gump restaurants and was like, well, I've not seen the movies because they used to do a thing where the waiters would come to your table. They give you a little bit of a quiz on Forrest Gump. And I didn't know any of the questions, but
Oh yeah.
they
Yeah.
also they had these signs on the table so it said "Go Forrest Go," and then when you want the waiter to stop at your table, you flip it, stop Forrest stop. So it's like run Forrest
Oh,
run,
that's
stop Forrest stop.
oh,
All
that's
these little
great.
details like that's
Mhm.
I mean,
That's
I
brilliant.
don't eat shrimp, but
It's worth visiting,
um,
yeah.
but yeah,
Anyway,
it's worth
so
visiting
the
definitely.
film. So the
Yeah,
film.
yes, the film. So because I went to these restaurants, I watched the film when I was younger, and I thought, okay, it's a pretty okay film. Because I was young, I was a kid, I was a young kid.
You were
But
stupid.
stupid is as stupid does.
We all were. We all were.
It's it's
That's that's smooth. That's smooth. That's smooth.
oh yeah, but yes, I rewatched it last weekend, and wow, very different rewatching it through the older 21-year-old
Eyes, yeah.
lens. Um, for one, I now understand just how bad the Vietnam War was
Oh yeah.
because I didn't really know much about that one back then. But as I think most kids at that age probably shouldn't need to know that much about the Vietnam War.
Yeah.
But that's definitely stuff when you're older. But it's a really nice film. It's about this really
Yeah.
simple man who has a really extraordinary life, and it's just there's something really nice about that. And the way he retells the story to everyone listening, and how invested
Mhm.
the people in the bench are with his story.
I think what's quite interesting is how, like, as the film, because the first woman that he talks to is that she's quite uninterested, and then as the film goes on, they get the different people get more and more invested, and they start like
Yeah,
asking about it and whatnot. I like that. That's a nice little. It's a really nice, I think, framing device actually of that
yeah,
bench setting.
yeah,
The
definitely.
funny thing is that for my uni module, like developing ideas and story ideas, I actually came up with a story that's quite similar to Forrest Gump.
Oh
It's
yeah.
about this. It's basically like it's about this bloke who sort of has lived through about 100 years worth of history without ever aging, and he's now like telling this story to a uni student.
Okay,
Um,
yeah.
but I had never seen. But whenever I told that story, people said, "Oh, that's really like Forrest Gump," and I'd never seen it until this week. But I'm so glad that I've now waited till now to watch it because, now I love like sort of that era of history, like 50s, 60s, 70s history. Seeing like Elvis Presley and all the different presidents and of course, the Vietnam stuff I find quite interesting, but it is really effectively done. But I also think you get in that film a lot of variety. Like the Vietnam segments are so different from like when he's growing up, aren't they?
Yeah,
And then that's
it's
so different from like his running days and what. There's so much variety in that film, but I think I really like that.
it's really interesting. There's always so many different settings, but are all connected by this one very cohesive story
Yeah,
of
I
just
love
this
that.
one
I love
guy
that.
who just
Mhm.
he pretty much just happens along all these different things that happen. It's not like
Mhm.
he like actively necessarily really seeked out, oh, going to the army. Someone gave him a flyer and he went to the army, and then someone gave him,
Yeah,
then he just saw table tennis and he started playing table tennis because he was in the hospital. And it's just kind of this.
yeah,
It's almost like when you start with one thought and you just keep going and eventually you get
yeah. It
somewhere.
is. Yeah, it is
It's
like that.
simple, but in that, but Forrest is simple. He's a
Mhm.
simple guy, and I think there's a
But I
lot
also think, But I think yes, he's a character he's like a low IQ character and whatnot. But I think he has a lot of I think because he tells the story, you get his perspective. It's not like people making fun of him. You get his perspective. You get how he feels and reacts to certain things, which I think is really important to have
Yeah,
for a character
definitely.
like Forrest, and to not so he doesn't come across like a stereotype. I think is quite
Yeah.
important because he so easily could have done. But I think Tom Hanks does a great job and whatnot, and I think he won an Oscar for Forrest Gump, didn't he, for
I
his
think he
acting?
did, yeah.
I think he did, yeah. Um, but I love it. I mean, it's Robert Zemeckis who did Back to the Future, and you do get that sort of magic that those films have, and obviously, kind of retelling of history and whatnot. And I think there's a lot of things you can look at into this film with it, how it depicts certain events of history. And people have discuss like its political leanings, which I think we won't obviously discuss, but I think it's quite interesting of what people can gather from this film. I think it's quite interesting, but
Mm.
I think again it's a really fun film, really feel good as you say. I love Lieutenant Dan, his character
Yeah.
arc. How again a bit like I said that the film has a lot of variety. His character goes through so many different stages in his life, and I think it's remarkable that character. Jenny's great. His mum is, Forrest's mum is great. Yeah, and Bubba, obviously the absolute
Mm.
legend, probably the best character in fiction, I would say. Um, it's just so and there's so many quotable lines that there's so many moments where I was like, oh, that's from Forrest Gump. Oh, this line's from Forrest Gump. It's such a fun film. I love it.
Yeah, there's a lot to really love about it. I really love the character work on it. I
Mhm.
love the way it kind of like when he's talking about the characters, it kind of inflect more from it, like with the way he talked about like Bubba and dying and whatever, and that he only really wanted to say so much and whatever. The way he talked about
Mhm.
Lieutenant Dan as well was just like he held him in such high regard, even though like Lieutenant Dan absolutely hated him for saving him at
Yeah.
one point. It was just like and the way he
But it's how
always,
Dan sort of changes and like
yeah,
learns to like that's what makes it so compelling though.
yeah. And then the way he's always cared about Jenny as well, even though she goes off and
Yeah.
does all this
It's
wild stuff, and like he's always there for her and the way he loves her and everything.
Mhm.
I like the whole point he makes as well about that he's not like it because he's like lower IQ. It doesn't mean he doesn't know what love is,
Exactly.
and
Yeah.
that was a
I
really
that's
interesting
what
point.
that's what I was saying because a lot of people have often like said is Forrest autistic perhaps or like neurodivergent. A
Mm,
lot of people have made that connection. And if you compare this to say Rain Man, where Raymond in that film, the autistic character, he has it's not from his perspective and he's just the subject. It's about him, but you never get his perspective on things, and that's what makes that film so dated. But Forrest Gump, it is kind of you get his perspective and you get how he feels and you get him kind of proving people wrong of like actually no that's not no just because I might talk funny or that I do have a lower IQ doesn't mean I don't understand. I think that's a really special little moment.
yeah,
um and it's the bit when he meets his we're allowed to spoil it, it's 30 years old, when he meets his
it's
kid,
old. Yeah,
and he has that fear of like um is my kid also going to be like dumb, you know
yeah.
that kind of fear that he has that will people hate him as well, and that's a really it's a valid fear for him to feel, but it's just really I love it, I really do. um yeah, there's lots of interesting it's such a great film to discuss, but it's also just really fun to watch, and like I gotta say as well,
Yeah.
the songs in the film, there's so many iconic songs, and like when he starts running and then Run on Empty starts playing, I was like, oh my God, I love that song, it's a great song, that is. um
Yeah, I think it's worth noting at this point that we are going in spoiler territory for these movies. These are all pretty old movies, so
and also pretty
you've had
iconic
your
films.
time. You've had your time
Yeah.
to try and watch them.
Yeah. Although I should say we're probably going to get now if we like Forest, we ping pong back.
Woo! Back to you.
Yeah. And I'm going to go for a more recent film from the 2010s, and I'm going to pick. It's a film I think I've mentioned this before on the podcast briefly, but it is from 2017, everyone's favorite year. The Shape of Water, Guillermo del Toro's film.
Somehow I knew you were going to say this.
Did
I
you
think
really?
I think you mentioned it when I in episode 2 when I discussed Pacific
When you
Rim
talk about Pacific Rim, I
because
know
it's the
like
same
yeah, I think
director.
that's where
And I
yeah,
was
Guillermo del
like,
Toro, but
what movies have won from 2010? Guillermo del Toro did that movie. I don't remember which year. So
yeah.
2017 didn't help me get, but you said 2010s. I was like, And then you said you briefly mentioned it before. I was like, hey, wait a second.
He's like, yeah.
The gears
But
were
obviously,
turning.
yeah. But yeah, Guillermo del Toro, of course, an acclaimed sort of auteur director, like in contemporary cinema. He's done a lot of like great genre films. Obviously, Pacific Rim, which Mr. L was one of your favorites. He's
Absolutely.
done Pan's Labyrinth, which I've had to study tirelessly at school and uni. It's a great film. Well, it's a good film, but just it's just not for me at all. He's done a lot of these kind of it kind of bridges the gap between a blockbuster director and a sort of arty director.
Yeah. Didn't he do a new
And
Pinocchio a couple of years ago that won a Best
yeah, it won
Award?
Best Animated for
Yeah.
Netflix. Yeah, he did that. And that's the thing. He sort of subverts a lot of typical fairy tale sort of and fantasy genre tropes and flips them on their head. So Shape of Water is similar to that because it's about this a non-verbal woman, Eliza, played by Sally Hawkins, who falls for this fish creature. And it's this film has been sort of mocked as it's the one where Sally Hawkins shags a fish.
I remember you mentioning that.
Yeah, no, this is the yeah. People have mocked it over the years, and I do think it's way more than that, And it's again kind of similar to Anora, It is more taboo, particularly how it covers like sex, but I do think it's quite interesting. And I have talked about it before on my channel, but this is a film that has really grown and grown in my mind, and I absolutely love it now. And it's by far my favorite Del Toro film, and I really love it. So yeah, as I said, it's set during the mid 1960s in the backdrop of the Cold War, and the Civil Rights Movement. And as I say, you've got Eliza, who is a janitor at this sort of research base and whatnot, but she falls for this fish creature. And even though obviously she can't talk, they form this connection, like just non-verbally through, communicating. So you have, I think it is really interesting. And also you have the other characters that like her friends. So you have Zelda, who's a black woman played by Octavia Spencer. Again, at a time obviously where racism was about. And I think that there's new things because like the fish creature is sort of othered, just like how black people at the time were othered in society.
Yeah.
And you also have another character that helps Eliza, Giles. He's a closeted gay man at the time, obviously, where homosexuality was illegal, and also at the time where it was seen as sort of almost disgusting, like how we sort of see the fish sex sort of thing as disgusting. So I think it's he has a non-verbal character, a gay character, a black character. He has these like characters from groups that have been othered in the past, and kind of shining a light on them retrospectively with this historical setting. Obviously, I love this setting of like 60s Cold War. I just find it very interesting. Um, Again, you also have the Soviets kind of as a backdrop as well, which was seen, they were othered by the West and that kind of conflict and whatnot. I just find it really interesting. You've got Michael Shannon as the villain who, on the surface is a kind of stereotypical white guy in a suit, and he has like a loving family, kind of nuclear family with the kind of the house and the nice car and whatnot. But there is like this kind of a very under the surface of him, there's this kind of like if deep insecurity of who he is. Um, and he's trying to compensate for that for like having this dominance over everyone else. So I just find it really interesting, but it was also a great film, gorgeously directed, a great visual style, some fantastic like sequences and whatnot. And there's a great like dance sequence, like a sort of dream sequence. It's really creative, really fun, and again, it subverts these typical, fancy tropes. Like this is kind of like a sort of Little Mermaid sort of thing, where if it were like I've heard this argument before, like if it were a bloke falling in love with like a beautiful mermaid, people think that's really sexy, but people think this is weird. I do think that's quite an interesting thing.
Yeah, it
Um,
is.
yeah, I think it's that kind of I just find it really interesting, and again, particularly with Eliza, I do, as a neurodivergent person, I do kind of connect with her as a character. A bit like when we were talking about Forrest Gump and whatnot, showing a character like her with agency. Um, I think that's really great, and we really see it from her perspective, and I love that. But yeah, I was really surprised with this film, and I'm glad that it won Best Picture. This kind of bold genre film, a bit like Anora again, talks about these kind of and tackles more taboo subject matter that does make people uncomfortable. I love films like that really are that can challenge you. I love that, but it's also
Yeah.
fun to watch. Yeah. So, pinging back to you for your final film.
Yeah, I'm gonna call Time Down.
for your final
Yes.
film, and this is the one that I don't know what you've picked. I know it's from the 90s.
Yes, the only thing I've told you is that it is from the 90s, and I've left you to
Mhm,
your own devices to try and predict what you think I might have watched from the
mhm.
90s.
Because there's the thing is there's a few films because the 90s had a bit like the 70s had quite a few like big films of that era. So stuff like Silence of the Lambs, Schindler's List, Braveheart, Titanic. Um, I had a hunch. I don't know why. I think because Gene Hackman was in it, I had a hunch that it might be Unforgiven.
No,
Am I correct? Am I not?
no.
Did I mention it just then?
You did, yes.
So it's either Silence of the Lambs, Schindler's List, Braveheart, or So it's not Schindler's List because that's too depressing for you to watch. No offense. I just know. I'm gonna guess Braveheart.
Yeah,
Braveheart.
Braveheart, yeah. That's the one I went for.
I had a hunch. I had a hunch it might be Braveheart as well because I think it's like I feel like it would be kind of the thing you would watch as well.
Yeah, yeah. So I watched this. I watched Braveheart pretty recently. I think last week.
You okay there?
The sun is at the wrong angle and my blinds are broken. So
To be fair, throughout this recording, you have looked like you are regenerating.
I've been trying to kind of avoid it when I can, but you know.
Yeah, but yeah, it's
But,
glowing. Yeah,
whoa. But,
whoa. But yeah,
yeah,
so
so
Braveheart.
Braveheart. Yeah, so we watched Braveheart. So it stars Mel Gibson as William Wallace, and it's about the Scots fighting back against the English. And
Just
it's
sounds like a Friday night out. That does.
just but it was a really interesting film. It takes its time setting everything up. It's a long film. It's about 3 hours.
Mhm.
The first hour kind of just takes its time really setting up the character of who William Wallace is and his kind of love story and everything, just to then completely say, no, take her out. And then that kind of makes his motive for the rest of the film. And this idea of the Scots kind of this really bad deal with the English where they kind of they're their own people that are kind of ruled by the English and they kind of have a say over them and
Yeah.
everything. And so they kind of start fighting for their freedom and it's one of those films where
Freedom.
it's kind of hard if yeah freedom it's one of those films where it's kind of hard to say a lot about but it because it is quite a simple premise of just they're just fighting for their freedom from the English but it's more
Yeah.
about the kind of the way that the story is told. There's a couple of interesting characters. There's a lot of really nice fight scenes going on in there between armies. And I was thinking about it the other day, how it's so weird to think that back in medieval times you have like these just armies of like 300 men just rock up with their swords and shields and stand on opposite sides, and then eventually they would just charge in. Nowadays, you just run in with a gun and you just start shooting people, or you just drop a bomb or something, or pull in a tank. It's so different. But there's something really nice about how it used to look with like the cinematic experience of like the old style battles of just all these people rushing
Yeah.
in with their weapons ready to
It
fight.
has that.
And
It has that kind of like epic quality that
yeah,
because I haven't seen Braveheart. Yeah, I've never seen it before. But it obviously has these like big battle sequences with armies and whatnot.
yeah,
I feel like in the 90s you kind of had a few films like so obviously Braveheart. You also had Titanic. Obviously, this big epic with lots of extras and this kind of
yeah,
grand scale. Obviously, Gladiator came out 2000, and then you had like
yes,
Lord of the Rings, Return of the King. I feel like the 90s and 2000s had some of those kind of more epic sort of films. These like prestige films that had these grand scopes and whatnot. And yeah, but it's
definitely.
cool to see that.
But yeah, I think it was a really interesting film to watch. Obviously, it is very, very loosely based on various historical events, a lot of which don't necessarily line up with each other. But I didn't know until afterwards it was supposed to be based on historical events. I tend to not take that into thing. It's just
Yeah.
kind of like we're taking inspiration from these things that did happen to tell a similar
Mhm.
story with some similar characters, but it's not supposed to
It's
be
never going to be
not
100%.
supposed
It's
to
never
be
going
an
to be
accurate
100%.
retelling. But I've been a very it is a good film to watch visually. I think the acting's pretty good. I don't want to spoil too much because I feel like I want you to kind of go off and watch this now and see if we can discuss that at some point. But
Absolutely. Yeah.
I think it's a film where I don't necessarily have a lot to say about it. But because it's just I struggle for words with this one, but it's one of those ones that it was a good experience that I enjoyed. I probably won't watch it again for a while. It is 3 hours, but give me
Yeah.
5 years, I might come back to it. But
We could watch it. We could watch it in 5 years.
yeah. But overall,
That's yeah.
solid movie, solid performance from Gibson, solid all round kind of storytelling. I like a lot of what the film does with its plot and its themes of like the idea of fighting for freedom and everything. I think I love the way that William Wallace is like such an inspiration to the other Scots that he can kind of unite everybody to fight against the English. I like kind of the way that his story is kind of retold for other people when they're trying to say, "Oh, have you heard about him? He killed like 20 people with his own sword." The next
Mhm.
guy tells it it's 50 people. The next guy tells it it's 100, and he kind of becomes
It's
this living
the
legend.
Rashomon effect.
Yeah, it's just
Yeah.
he kind of becomes this kind of living legend for all of them, and just it's quite interesting to see how it comes on. Then kind of the politics between like Scotland and between then within themselves and with England and the king and the prince, and there's a lot of interesting moving parts there as well. It's but yes, I don't want to give too much away, but overall
There.
solid movie. I'm definitely glad I chose that one to watch out of a lot of options.
Yeah,
I
you
think
have
that
like
was a
nearly
good
100
pick.
films. There's nearly like 100 films that you could pick from.
There are a lot of choices,
There's a
but I think
lot.
this was a good pick.
Yeah,
I'm
that's
happy I
fair.
chose this one. I would recommend
Yeah,
it.
I will give it a shot because, as I say, I haven't seen it. But I think what's also interesting is Braveheart. It's a bit like Forrest Gump, where it's become this quite iconic film in pop culture. You know, everybody knows like William Wallace with the blue and white face
Yeah.
paint. It's like they may take our land, but they'll never take our freedom.
Yes.
It's become an iconic. It's like my mama said, life is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're gonna. It's one of those. It's become iconic, and or like Titanic. I'm the king of the world. Woo! I
Yeah.
could do. I could do another line from Titanic, but that would You know what I'm on about.
Okay.
You know full well what line I'm on about. And
Yeah, let's
I'm not. Yeah, that's what
let's
I mean.
keep
Not do that.
that.
Yeah, let's maybe not do that. Or but that's what I mean. I think the 90s and 2000s had it was another time where a lot of a lot more of these mainstream sort of what was mainstream at the time could also translate to prestige. So Forrest Gump, Silence of the Lambs. Silence of the Lambs is a horror film winning Best Picture. Unforgiven, a Western. Steven Spielberg's Schindler's List. It's about like Oppenheimer with Christopher Nolan and whatnot. Forrest Gump, Braveheart, we've always talked about. Titanic, obviously this big film of that time. Gladiator. Chicago. Obviously another musical. Um, Obviously Return of the King. Franchise film, fantasy film. A lot of that era, and even the films that didn't win. A lot of the ones that were often in contention. So stuff like Pulp Fiction, Shawshank Redemption. The 90s was like a great decade for cinema, really.
Yeah.
It was Good Will Hunting. Good Will Hunting, that's another one. Like a great decade for cinema. A bit like the 70s, in a way. Yeah. And I reckon we're kind of on the verge of another sort of 1990s era of cinema. Because I
Yeah.
think after like I reckon after the sort of fatigue we've all had with like legacy sequels and superhero films and like sort of franchise films, I think people are craving something new and something fresh. A bit like how in the 80s people were like bombarded with these big blockbusters with like Schwarzenegger and Stallone and whatnot. And like they are fun, but they were kind of people like bombarded with all these films in the 80s, and then the 90s comes along and you get a lot of more younger, fresh filmmakers doing some interesting things like Tarantino, Nolan, Wes Anderson, coming to their prime in the 90s and whatnot. I think we're on the verge of something like that nowadays.
Yes, of course, with the Minecraft movie coming out.
Of course, obviously that's going to, that's of course going to sweep the awards. I don't know why you say that in an ironic sense. I think it really will. Who's directing it again? I don't know. I don't really care. I can't be asked to
No.
look. That will be another time, though. That will be another time. We originally thought that the Minecraft movie would be the next episode 9, but plans have slightly changed a little bit because you're going away.
Yeah.
You're going away for a little bit, not to prison, but
No,
and
I'm
that's
going to prison.
he's going to prison for tax evasion. Yeah. Don't worry,
I went to a
HMRC,
party I
you're
shouldn't
okay.
have.
Yeah, don't worry, HMRC.
Oh,
But no, next episode, episode 9, will be our April episode. We're going to covering Mickey 17, which is Bong
yes.
Joon-ho's next film, or latest film, sorry. I think it's, as we're recording it, it's just come out, but we haven't had time to watch it.
Yes,
So
it came
we'll
out
say,
yesterday.
yeah, but we both want to watch that. I'm looking forward to it. He's a great director, Parasite, phenomenal film, another Best Picture winner, you
Yeah.
know. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. And then episode 10, I believe, is the Minecraft movie episode.
We're giving you advance
Yeah.
warnings so you can prepare yourself mentally for it.
Yeah, I think that's a really appropriate episode for episode 10. I really do think that's.
You really think?
That couldn't have been timed better because it's like the 10th. It's like this sort of roundness to it. I think that's, perfect. I couldn't be timed better. But that is the end of the episode now.
Indeed.
So yeah. So hope you all enjoyed it. I really enjoyed this one.
Yeah, it was pretty good.
The Oscars, sort of these like films. This is kind of like my wheelhouse, especially. So I was looking forward to doing this one.
Yeah.
To really kind of highlight all these different films and whatnot, and hopefully, introduce. I love the discussion we had about all the Best Picture winners. I love that discussion. I thought there was some really interesting stuff that we sort of talked about with those, and I will definitely check out Braveheart. I hope you go and check out some of those ones, especially like Best Years of Our Lives. I was really happy to see that you found that quite interesting. What I had to say about
I'm
it.
quite interested. I do like some war movies. I think at some point, like kind of ones that are like more about the effect the war has on people.
The aftermath, yeah, because that's not like a war film with like action scenes. That's not what that is. It's like it's a character piece. It's like the aftermath of war and like soldiers returning home and whatnot. A bit like, almost like First Blood, in a way, but like obviously World War II and a bit more, and
I do think that's an interesting one we could do for part 3 is talk about like films that are kind of about war, but aren't necessarily about the war itself. It could be some interesting ideas there.
That could be interesting, yeah. But
or we'd make it war in general. But I think there's definitely a topic there.
Possibly, yeah. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed that. Let us know what you thought of anything to talk about, whether it's any of the Oscar wins. What do you think was snubbed? What do you think should have won? Any of these things. Let us know some of your favorite Best Picture winners from years gone by. It could have been one of the ones that we've mentioned, or if there's any others that we haven't talked about, let us know in the comments because there's so many I could have picked from. But let us know all that in the comments. What do you think of Yassified Shrek, Bond? Any of this sort of stuff.
Comment if your name is Oscar, by the way. If your name is Oscar and you're watching, comment. This is your episode.
That'll be please do. That'll be brilliant. And the Oscar for best, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to joke.
Not again.
We've already done that joke. But yeah, that's everything. But I gotta say, I'm tired. I need to go. I want to have a lie down.
Yeah, and the Oscar for best podcast viewers is you watching.
That's what I was going to do. That's what I was going to do. But anyway, take care, guys.
Thanks, guys. Bye.